Some other very smart souls brought sunscreen, I hear. Who knew it would be this hot on a climate strike day in September? So thank you all for coming. I just want to say a couple things. How to start this was a bit of a challenge, and maybe I'll read from our esteemed leader. Adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope, but I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is. We are part, folks, of a worldwide movement today. It's unbelievable. Almost 5,000 now total strikes across the world. You are one of at least 30 in the state of Michigan today. You are making this the biggest day in the planet's climate change history. All right, now that I have your attention, my name's Denise Keel, and I have the privilege of trying to make this event run for us today, okay? So stay with me. We have got music, we have got tons of great speakers. I see you all around all the different tables. I've got lots of really exciting announcements to make throughout the event today. And I want, yeah, woo! Why not? Why not? So I think that actually our very first speakers might be ready to go. And since it's a youth movement, we thought it would be only fitting if one of the folks who's really been leading this movement for us from Central High, I see you over there. You guys ready? Come on up here. Give a hand for K Central students, Chloe Carson, Vanessa Fernandez.
Hi, I'm Chloe Carlson.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Fernandez. Should I start? Ready? On 3. 1, 2, 3. When I was 5, I wanted to be a teacher.
When I was 7, I wanted to be an actress.
When I was 10, I wanted to be a firefighter.
When I was 12, I wanted to be a doctor.
Now I'm 15.
Now I'm 17.
And when
I get older, the only thing I want to be is alive.
Because climate change is happening now.
It was happening in the 1800s.
And unlike the riddle of the silent fallen tree, it will continue to happen.
Even if we're not here to see it.
The 6 hottest years have all occurred since 2010.
17 of the 18 hottest years on record have occurred since 2001.
It's as if we were patients being advised not to smoke.
We know climate change is killing us, but we continue to excite the problem. So how warm will it really get? From the Paris Accords to the UN and the IPCC,
countless organizations have advised us on just how warm our Earth can get, and yet we continue to push the limit.
We've heard 2 degrees turn to 1.5.
And yet we're still on track to hit 3.6.
And if we continue on this track, the world we know will never look the same. At 3 degrees, Europe will be in a permanent drought.
At 4 degrees, global damages could surpass $600 trillion.
But it doesn't stop there. Some studies show a rising chance of exceeding 6 degrees.
And according to the UN, if we hit 8 degrees, 1/3 of the planet will be uninhabitable.
That's millions of mothers,
fathers,
children,
siblings,
veterans,
elders,
wildlife,
plant life,
human life. That's millions of lives with no place to live. This is not a polarized issue.
Not a political debate.
This is the difference between life and death.
A question on just how ignorant one can be.
A question of how you and me level up to the rest of society.
A question of morality.
Equality.
Apathy.
But in essence, it's not a question at all. This is our future. This is reality.
change is something we have to fear. The idea that we can put it off, wait for the next generation, is ridiculous. We are the next generation, standing here in front of you, pleading for your help. Most scientists are making assumptions for the year 2050. In 2050, I will be 47 years old, hopefully just about halfway through my life. My peers and I will suffer the repercussions of climate change. Greta Thunberg is 16 years old, and she's the reason that we're all here. It took a teenager to stand up and vocalize her fear, her concern, a teenager who should be worried about school and where her career is going to be, not whether when she's in her 50s she's going to have to worry about her home being underwater. A teenager who should be worried about what questions will be on an exam, not what questions and critiques Congress will have. She is a teenager just like the rest of us, and while you, the older generation, makes the decisions, we, the youth, suffer the consequences. Climate change affects us all, and the idea that you don't need to worry about it is not only reckless, but also ignorant. Climate change is happening, and we need to open our eyes. I have not known a life without climate change. It seems like every year sets record highs and lows. Every year seems to be the hottest, every winter the coldest. Hurricanes that wreak havoc on coastal states the worst. Recent wildfires that we've seen the biggest in history. The shrinking ice caps, the bleached coral. Wake up, open your eyes to the damage that we're causing. The planet is dying and we still have a small chance to save it, but only if we act now, right now.
When I was 14, I began to question why the world had become so dim, why the skies were no longer as blue as the sea, and why the sea no longer resembled the happy aquatic land that Disney always showed me. I was confused why one winter we had rolling hills of white snow, and the next all we had was patches of dead grass and gray skies. Adults continuously told my juvenile mind that it was just a hot winter, that weather patterns always fluctuate, that you can never predict the weather in Michigan, and that everything was normal, that everything was okay. And so I believed them. I believed them when the ice caps began to melt. I believed them when the ocean levels began to rise. I believed them when species began to die. I believed them when more wildfires began to emerge. I believed them when children died from a heat surge. I believed them over and over until I could not believe them anymore. Until the world had become so damaged, so disgusting, so dim, that not even I, an idiotic little kid, could believe that this is normal. Whether they were intentionally trying to deceive me, or if they were just stuck in their own programmed ignorance, I will never know. But what I do know is they will never change. They have created a problem that they will not claim, started a game they will not finish, and they now leave us to be the new players. And for that, I thank them. Thank them for creating in me a sense of urgency, a restless fight within my mind, constantly challenging me to make a change. I thank them for investing in me the authority to lead the future and allowing me to fight for tomorrow. And trust me, there will be a tomorrow. 3, 2, 1. It's up to us to make a change, to speak out.
Because it is no longer a question of if climate change is happening.
It's a question of when it will be too late.
Of what degree we will surpass.
Of how much land will be drowned.
How many trees will be burned.
Of how many species will die.
Of how high oceans will rise.
It will be a question of what our future will look like.
If there even will be a future to look at.
But we do not fear this outcome. We have become the leaders of tomorrow because adults have failed to be the leaders of today. And we refuse to follow in their path.
As of one other brief announcement, how many people here are using social media, looking at all the strikes around the world on their phones? Yeah. Why don't we make sure we all use hashtag global climate strike, right? So take that selfie. There's a guy on roller skates. I feel like that makes it now a rally. Like, you need a selfie. Absolutely. Use that hashtag so that we know that Kalamazoo is in the house on social media. With that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Going to talk a little bit more about the urgency, why we're here, why this matters. My friend and colleague, Dr. Paul Clements.
Thanks, Denise. Hi, so I'm Paul Clements, one of the organizers of today's climate strike. The Amazon is burning. We've seen the devastation from hurricanes in Puerto Rico and the Bahamas, from wildfires in California, from droughts across the country, and from floods in Mozambique and here in Kalamazoo. Today we're here to say the climate crisis is real and it is time to act. The climate crisis is real. I want to hear you. The climate crisis is real. It's time to act. The climate crisis is real. The climate crisis is real. Thank you, Chloe and Vanessa. And thanks to the other young people who helped to organize today's strike. Thanks to Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old Swedish girl who called for the global climate strike that we're part of. When Greta spoke at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland in January, she said, "I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear that I feel every day, and then I want you to act." In 1992, our President Bush signed the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, joining with 196 other countries. Together, we committed to, quote, stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Yes, that was 1992. But it couldn't be done without American leadership. And our oil companies and billionaires like the Koch brothers, who made their fortunes polluting the planet, spent millions of dollars to make sure America wouldn't lead. They bought off politicians like our Congressman Fred Upton when he chaired the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And they set up whole foundations to promote fake science. So today, we have very dangerous anthropogenic interference. We've seen carbon pollution increasing and increasing in our atmosphere. And we've seen the devastation that results. The climate crisis is here. You remember your part. The climate crisis is here. It's time to act. The climate crisis is here. The truth is, the devastation we've seen so far is just the beginning. It's come from a little more than 1 degree Celsius of global heating, but we're pretty much committed to global heating increasing to 2 degrees Celsius. The hurricanes, droughts, and floods, wildfires will get much worse. We need to stop global heating from going past 2 degrees Celsius. Sadly, the worst harms from the climate crisis will fall on our children and future generations. Our leaders have ignored their needs and interests. This is one reason it's so important that students are leading the way in today's climate strike. As organizers, as speakers, and as citizens, it's time for adults to take some responsibility. Thank you, students. Climate justice means keeping fossil fuel in the ground with a rapid transition to wind and solar. Climate justice means taking care of people, mostly in the global south, whose lives are devastated by rising oceans, storms, and droughts. Climate justice means government at every level, from the city of Kalamazoo to the United Nations, making climate resilience a priority. Climate justice means the city of Kalamazoo finally adopting its climate action plan and putting real resources behind it. We're here to say the climate crisis is here. The climate crisis is here. The climate crisis is here. Thank you.
Paul, it seems like a really fitting time to work in one of my announcements. So those of you that don't already get emails from me, you know you want to, right? Keep updated on all this stuff. Somewhere out there in the midst is a table for the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. All right, we are over 30 groups now. Where are you guys at? Over there, right over there. Yay. Christina Petrovska, Josh Gottlieb, thank you. You can go right over there and get signed up to make sure you keep up with these things, because just this morning, I let everybody on that list know that our own Environmental Concerns Committee, which is your citizen committee, heard your concerns, and we together wrote a climate emergency declaration. They have moved that forward to our city commission to be put on the next available agenda. It's because of you guys. I do think these social actions matter. If this strike wasn't coming up, that movement wouldn't have happened that fast, folks, and it's because everyone here helped sign that, helped write that, and came out to a meeting last month to show their support. I'll be asking you for your support again at hopefully an upcoming city commission meeting for the city of Kalamazoo to declare our own climate emergency and tell the truth. Yeah. Thank you, Environmental Concerns Committee. So next up is a speaker from Laurie Norrix High School. Where's my Laurie Norrix in the house? Woo! Thank you so much, Benjamin Sierra Torres. It is all yours.
Hello and good morning, or afternoon, sorry. I'm Benjamin Torres, a peace jammer from Laurie Norrix High School, and I'm going to be speaking about how climate change affects minorities in developing countries. I was asked pretty recently to make a speech about this, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't really have any idea at the time. The thought never crossed my mind. I've been too busy thinking about how climate change would directly affect me, how it would affect my friends and my family and the people around me. I was surprised to see just how little climate change was affecting me currently. It isn't going to change the way that I live or the way that I spend my resources. It's hard to convince people to want to change something that isn't affecting their lives currently. So I hope that I'll be able to show you just how much it's affecting other people's lives. And if you don't already know, it's a lot more than you might have thought. Climate change doesn't just affect us. If we're going to be honest, climate change is probably going to affect us the least. The people that are being affected are the tens of millions of people starving in Africa because of climate change-induced droughts, and dying, and 10,000 people dying every day. Or the underprivileged civilians living on islands that are currently struck by stronger hurricanes every year. These people can't continue to live like this, to die like this. These are the people in developing countries. There are people in developing countries that live next to factories, and they're forced to work in those factories. But those same factories are killing them. The toxic chemicals that they produce as the byproduct of the consumer products is killing the world, but it's also killing them. And the worst part is they can't do anything about it. They can't petition their government, or rather, they're too afraid to stand up against it. Climate change is making it impossible to farm, impossible to raise livestock, impossible to live. Someone you've never met before is going to suffer, is going to starve and die because of the choices that we've made thousands of miles away. We are supporting this whether we like it or not, in the car or bus that we used to get here, or in the t-shirts and clothes that we're all wearing. As America, as the wealthiest, most influential country in the world, we need to help lead this movement, and we need to make saving the world viable, affordable, and quick. We are all our worst enemy, and we need to work together if we're going to save the world. We need to stand up against it, and for the people that can't stand up. Climate change isn't a partisan issue. If there was an asteroid heading for Earth right now, there wouldn't be an argument on whether or not it would be too detrimental. Everyone would be working together to get rid of it before it was too late. In our case, the asteroid is already hitting parts of the world harder than we could imagine. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. It shows that you don't just say you want something done, but you actually do it. And I encourage you to go out and vote for what you believe in, to petition for what you believe in, and to protest for what you believe in. And most importantly, I encourage you to not just know how to save the world, but to actually do it. Thank you.
So So Benjamin gave me two great openings, and the first one is that he's wearing his Great Lakes Peace Jam t-shirt. Yeah, I see right directly center stage in front of me the Great Lakes Peace Jam table and tent, and they are a proud partner of the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. Everybody can't get up here and speak, so I'll try to give a shout out when I can. They are having a Climate Crisis Youth Summit on October 26th. That's a Saturday in Sangren Hall at WMU. Go over to their table, all you young folks, and go be a part of that action. Peace Jam is a wonderful organization for all you to be involved in. So how about some more youth?
Stop. What are you doing? What are you doing to help your community,
your city,
your state,
your country,
your planet?
your home?
What are you doing to raise awareness of climate change?
What are you doing to get involved?
We are up here fighting to help our community,
Our city,
our state,
our country,
our planet.
our home.
We are up here raising awareness.
We are up here getting involved.
Yet we are just teens. But we have to fight.
Fight for our planet.
Fight for our home. Fight for our future. We are being robbed of our future, robbed of our now.
In school, we learn about global warming. Not what's in a book, not what's on a test, but how we're killing the planet.
So now you know why we care. Let us paint you a picture.
Calm, a waterfall flowing into a river.
Lively, trees thriving on the bank.
Scenic, tangled branches holding out their arms.
Life, nature at its finest.
Gone. Havoc, destruction, the burning of our planet. All could have been avoided if we had acted. The strain on our environment is too much to handle.
We cannot go back to fix air pollution, the overproduction of goods, the burning of the Amazon, all for nothing. What was it really for?
It was for the new technology,
New cattle,
new production.
a new way of life, but it was killing our planet.
So now you've seen the picture. So now you've heard the story. Will that be our future, or are you willing to change?
So what will you do? What will you do about the inaction of large corporations, non-believers, and those who only think of money?
We are up here fighting for our future, the future of our generation.
We youth are growing up on a dying planet, and we need that to change. It is not too late to make a difference. It's not too late to make a change. Thank you.
Greetings. Kalamazoo Public Library is pleased to be able to participate in this important community event. I represent the library today as the person who coordinates our annual One Book, One City initiative called Reading Together. Just like many schools and college campuses have a common read for their student communities, Kalamazoo Public Library has been organizing Reading Together for the greater Kalamazoo community for 18 years. In addition to reading one book as a community, the library then organizes local events around the themes of the selected book. Over the years, those themes have included race, immigration, our Great Lakes, and poverty, just to name a few. Late last spring, we surveyed the public to ask what topics our residents would be most interested in reading about and discussing for Reading Together 2020. The most frequent response on that survey was climate change. And that result guided our selection committee as we researched and read several different titles over the course of the summer. I'm here today to announce our final decision and to encourage you to read it, then participate in our programs next winter. It's a brand new book, just released this past Tuesday, entitled We Are the Weather, Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast by Jonathan Safran Foer, author of the novels Everything is Illuminated and Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, and of the 2009 nonfiction bestseller Eating Animals. In We Are the Weather, according to his publisher, Foer explores the central global dilemma of our time in a surprising, deeply personal, and urgent new way. The task of saving the planet will involve a great reckoning with ourselves, with our all-too-human reluctance to sacrifice immediate concern for the sake of the future. We have, he reveals, turned our planet into a farm for growing animal products, and the consequences are catastrophic. Only collective action will save our home and way of life. And it all starts with what we eat and don't eat for breakfast. Speaking for our committee, we found Four's book to be honest, personal, and realistic, offering food for thought, pun intended, on the subject of climate change in an accessible way. And accessibility is important when choosing a book we're encouraging our entire community to read. It includes some history, some philosophy, a little science, but mostly pragmatic, relatable observations about how we as individuals can start to take action that will have an impact on this existential crisis we are facing. Jonathan Safran IV will be coming to Kalamazoo to speak at Chenery Auditorium on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. Since the book was just released, the library is almost done cataloging and processing over 200 copies that should be available by Monday at all of our locations. But you can place a hold right now at www.kpl.gov with your library card. By the way, Western and K College students are eligible for library cards. Stop by our table, which is that direction, for more information. And while you're there, you can also pick up a Save the Date bookmark and sign up for ways you can participate in and stay informed about Reading Together 2020. Thank you.
All right, cause and effect. Now, it is my special pleasure to introduce a real treat, our next speakers from El Sol Elementary School. Come on up. Ari Webb and Ocean Glover with backup support from Lexi and Rachel. Come on, Rachel.
Hello, my name is Ariana Webb. I'm 8 years old and in the 4th grade.
My name is Ocean Glover. I'm 9 years old and in the 5th grade.
The reason we are here today is because of climate change. It will affect our generation.
If this polluting does not stop, the human race and animals may become extinct. So Ariana and I are making a climate change group at our school, El Sol Elementary.
Our group is going to learn about climate change, make posters, and get our voices heard.
We are inspired by Greta Thunberg and all of you at this strike. At our school, we are going to show Greta's TED Talk to other students.
We think it is cool that Greta came to America by sailboat.
We need to better educate our parents and grandparents how to save energy and recycle, and how to consume food better to help greenhouse gas emissions.
Parents say they love their children, but they are destroying their children's future.
If there are other kids here who would like to start a climate change group in their school, come find us at the Extinction Rebellion table and we can share ideas.
We can talk about how to create a group, find a teacher who can be your advisor, get permission from the principal, and what activities your group can do. Luciana and I are the youngest people speaking today, and we are asking you to save our future and a future for all young people.
Thank you to all of you for coming today, and don't vote for Donald Trump.
Hi, everybody. I know we're all hot and sweaty, but so is the planet, and it will just get hotter. So I'd like to start off by saying how proud I am of all of us for being here and being present in the battle to save ourselves. You are all incredibly brave, and I take strength from you. I'm also honored that we are standing together and demanding better from the adults in charge. Demanding that the fossil fuel industry stop running wild in our forests and mountains. Demanding that climate justice be a priority. Justice for the people most affected by climate change. We don't have time at this point to just ask nicely for our planet to get the respect that it deserves. We must demand it. Being a young person living with the fear of gun violence, the weight of mental illness, and the stress of school, as well as all the other things we as teens in America face, is hard enough without waking up to a new article documenting how much shorter our window of opportunity for action gets every single day. We are living on a time bomb, and we didn't build it, but here we are taking responsibility and ownership for the mess people who came before us made. And they call us the lazy, phone-obsessed generation. I want to share a little bit about what it's like for me, constantly being aware that our time is running out and that our planet is dying and that humans knowingly destroyed it. If you relate to anything, raise your hand, cheer, let me know. It makes school seem pretty pointless. Why go to college and get a degree I'll most likely never use because the earth is unlivable? It causes me incredible guilt every time I use plastic or drive my car, despite the fact that huge corporations and the United States military are the ones most responsible for climate change. It's made me rethink future plans. I used to want kids before I realized they wouldn't have a planet to live on. And it makes me damn furious that my generation and the ones that come after us will be forced to deal with the damage. Damage we didn't cause. And it makes me so deeply sad sometimes I can't even function. This planet is so beautiful, and it's being ruined while elected officials, big business, and the fossil fuel industry throw their hands up and say, well, what are you gonna do? I reject that. In the past 3 years, America has witnessed the power that we, the future, contain. From our crusade against gun violence to our fight for the planet, the youth have never mobilized on such a large scale since Vietnam. And I am here to tell you, don't stop. Join the Sunrise Movement. Start a chapter in your school. Call your representatives and voice your concerns. Make them hear you. Keep coming to rallies, protest. Tell your friends, parents, grandparents, and anyone who will listen that we don't have time to just talk about the best course of action. We have to take action. And look, I know it's really hard to fight when it feels like you have no power. When you'd feel like you just have one voice, one vote. But look around you. You are not alone. Kalamazoo is not alone. Events just like this one are taking place all over the globe. It takes a village to save the planet. Thank you all.
Almost a year ago when Greta Thunberg started her strikes, that was before the special report by the IPCC on 1.5 degrees. That was before the Sunrise Movement, who's here today, stormed Dianne Feinstein's office demanding action on climate change. That was before the UK-based group Extinction Rebellion even started, and now we have one of the first chapters in Michigan right here in Kalamazoo. You are not alone. All these good folks are out here tabling. These are the folks that you should get involved with. We represent the continuum of action on climate change. I'm sure we can find something for you guys to do. Yeah. So next up, I'm going to get my next speaker up here. Come on up, Deirdre. A WMU graduate student studying in an interdisciplinary area. Her work is focused on climate, migrants, and refugees. Give it up for Deirdre Courtney.
Thank you, Denise. I also have my son, Miles Johnson. He's here with me today. He's a junior at
Portage Northern High School.
Woo! So, as Denise said, I am a PhD student. I study and focus on climate change, mostly climate change refugees, or that's my focus. Climate change is an existential threat. And climate change will continue to create climate migrants. A climate migrant, just so you know, also referred as climate refugees or environmental migrants, is a person who is displaced from their home, whether temporarily or permanently, internationally or internally, domestically here at home, by sudden or long-term changes in the environment. When most people hear the word refugee, it conjures up images of people running from persecution or war, often clinging to rafts or living in tents or refugee camps. According to the international law, refugees are people fleeing conflict or persecution, or according to a new report by the United Nations, suggests that by the year 2050, we could see 1 billion, yes, 1 billion people looking for a place to stay, a new permanent place to call home. Extreme weather events and rising sea levels are already causing irreversible damages to homes and communities all around the world. In fact, we are already seeing over 20 million people being forcibly removed from their homes each year, and this number is rising. A major issue facing these individuals is the fact that there is no clear legislative framework to respond to climate change refugees. A new legal framework is needed to protect those most vulnerable. Securing protections for climate refugees will ensure that no one, and I repeat, no one is left behind. These are some facts about climate refugees that you should know. Climate refugees are not just individuals displaced in faraway places in developing countries. Climate refugees are right here, even in Michigan. These people are the most vulnerable. Climate migrants experience greater political risk than other refugees who are able to receive protections under international laws. There are certainly individuals here in the U.S. today suffering from current environmental threats and afraid to go for help due to our current laws. According to estimates, there are more people displaced due to climate change than war. Not addressing this issue creates increased border conflicts and political instability, creating risk to national security. It is true that cutting down on the amount of meat we eat, switching over to energy efficiency bulbs, and even recycling may seem to make a small impact individually, but collectively, we can make a bigger impact and help reduce climate change and reduce the number of climate refugees. Come on, boss.
Let's continue to become trained experts in our communities, push for adaptation, mitigation, and legislative policies ahead of time. Support social justice organizations and stay engaged. What is the story I tell myself that keeps me from fully engaging around climate change?
And I think this is a question that most people should ask themselves. What is the story that I'm telling myself that keeps me from fully being engaged? For all of you here, continue to do what you're doing now. Stay engaged in your communities. Continue to learn as much as you can about climate change. And as Miles and I will do, we will all continue to strike.
Okay. Hi, my name is Basma Higazi, and I'm a senior at Portage Northern High School. So I can't really remember the first time I learned about climate change. I feel as though I remember it for as long as I can remember. It's always been a part of my life. And it was there when I lived in Staten Island, when Hurricane Sandy hit our house and absolutely demolished it, flooded the basement, and the water came upstairs onto the ground floor and ruined everything. I sat there and I said goodbye to all the memories as they washed away down the street. Climate change is here now. It's been here, and it's snowballing now bigger than ever, into the biggest fear humanity will ever have. It shows how our future is at stake, how our generation's survival is at stake. All due to corrupt politicians, due to decades of greed and corruption. These politicians have decided to put our health at stake. And these politicians knew, boy did they know, 40 years ago, they knew. As early as 1977, ExxonMobil knew. They lied. They lied about their environmental effects and kept it from the public, all for money. They knew they wouldn't stay profitable once the world knew. They wouldn't publicly acknowledge their doings, and they continued, all for money. They continued to gain power, and until less than 2 years ago, the CEO who oversaw all of this was the Secretary of State of the United States, the man that was representing all of us in the world stage. Fed up and frightened, I began to take action. I joined my school's environmental change club, and I started working with the Sunrise Movement. I spent my summer canvassing for politicians who promised a better future, who promised to prioritize people over profit. I learned that it's imperative that we all do everything we can to ensure that we are heard, because right now, we are the most important people to our elected representatives. Right now, the most important people in the eyes of our elected representatives are the incredibly wealthy people who work on behalf of those who stand to gain from a dying, burning planet. These people use their unlimited resources to line the pockets of politicians and their campaigns, so that if any representative were to take stand and defend the planet, they will be cut from their main source of funding. I stand to work against that, to move towards greener jobs, to move to make climate change a non-biased issue, to move to make climate change and move it out of politics. This is an issue that will affect every single one of us. This is our future. If the world burns, Republicans will not survive any more than Democrats will. This is an issue for everyone. Republicans cannot deny that it is or is not. I stand for a better future. I stand to make climate change a priority of today, not a priority of next week or tomorrow or next year. I stand to make it a priority of right now. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Bree King and I go to Western Michigan University. Please excuse my voice. I have something to say. Tragedy. It's hard to fathom until it strikes you or your loved ones. In 2017, a school bus full of children crashed in Southwest Michigan. My Nana was driving that bus. Why did that bus crash? A downpour lasting for 2 weeks flooded my small village in Cass County. What started as a stream turned into a river that was flowing through the streets, devastating the homes of my friends and my family. The roads couldn't withstand the amount of rain we had been experiencing, causing the roads to collapse all over. And although nobody was seriously injured in this accident, it left my family and my community wondering, how can we prevent this from happening again? Because no child should have to live in fear on their way to school. In my community, we weren't taught about climate change. Until recently, I didn't even know it existed. When I learned about the impacts that climate change was having all over the world, I began to fear for the future. When I discovered Sunrise, I learned that I could do something about this. And through Sunrise, I had the opportunity to take action. Sunrise is a youth-led movement working hard to fight against climate change. Their main focus right now is the Green New Deal. And Sunrise offers people of all ages to stay connected in the pursuit of a sustainable future. We see climate change impacting people all over the world. From Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas to the raging wildfires in California, to the excessive flooding, devastating homes in the Midwest. We know that we are running out of time, and fossil fuel CEOs are going to do anything they can to keep us from making any progress. We need politicians who won't stand for this behavior. We need politicians who will fight to protect for our future. We don't have time for them to wait around to sign on to the Green New Deal once everybody else does. We need a leader to defend Michigan's people, land, and the 20% of fresh water we have right here in Michigan. Senator Gary Peters has been lacking, and his constituents have been trying to get him to sign on to the Green New Deal for too long. The time is now, Senator Peters. We need you to step up or step aside because Michigan needs a leader. If any of you would like to join Sunrise and get involved, there will be a training at Kalamazoo College Saturday 28th, 9:30 to 5:30, to help people get engaged in climate change. Come find someone in a Sunrise shirt to sign up, or email us at sunrisekazoo@gmail.com. sunrisekazoo@gmail.com. Thank you.
Woo, Sunrise! Yeah, they were awesome! Give Sunrise a hand. 40% of the electorate will be the youth vote in 2020. I hope everybody's paying attention to what they have to say. You want to hear some more from our great students? Yeah. Up next, representing Students for Sustainable Earth at WMU, Erica Rasmussen.
Hi everyone, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Erica Rasmussen and I am a part of Students for Sustainable Earth at Western Michigan University. I'm a senior this year and have been studying biology and environmental sustainability studies. I came to Western back in 2016 and the identity linked to this university was how environmentally conscious and sustainable they were for a public university. We pride ourselves on making productive choices while creating ways to achieve carbon neutrality, such as having solar panels on some of our buildings, having roofs painted white to reflect more heat, the Gibbs House, which served as a laboratory for students to implement their sustainable design projects, and we even had a beekeeper club due to the severe decline of the honeybee species. With all these initiatives bringing ideas and people together, there is one event that occurred on our campus that united us like never before. Last year, construction for a new residence hall was approved. This plan involved uprooting 60 fully matured trees that made a huge impact on our ecosystem. When word got around campus, all departments were sending out emails to their students to get involved and help save our trees. We had business and biology students, engineers, professors, even some Kalamazoo citizens and businesses became involved to help us scream louder for these beautiful trees that have been here long before our campus. While students were home for Thanksgiving break, construction continued, and unfortunately our trees were cut down. Though this may have felt like a huge loss after the effort put into our strikes and petitions, we have learned something from this experience. We saw on a local scale what needs to happen at a global standpoint to fight climate change. People need to come together and acknowledge what science is telling us that our planet is going through. Everyone will feel their lives alter from climate change, which is exactly why we need to unite and hold big businesses and higher authorities accountable for the preservation of our planet. As I said before, Western has implemented a plan to have carbon neutrality by the year 2065. Our plans were set up for climate change, not climate crisis, which is exactly what this has developed into, a crisis. While I commend Western for their efforts, we urge you to do more. Be the leading university in sustainability and environmental consciousness. Set the example for other schools and businesses on what it looks like to be truly sustainable. I do not want to leave this campus knowing that we lost sight of what we truly stand for, a cleaner earth for generations to come. The effects of climate change are occurring a lot quicker than we anticipated. Our weather is becoming more and more unpredictable. Hurricanes are hitting the tropics stronger and more often than ever before in history. Our winters are becoming longer and colder. Droughts are lasting longer while we are running out of fresh water at the same time. Our global greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise quicker than anticipated in the past. The list goes on, and this is only the beginning. We need to do more to ensure that future generations will have the opportunity to live with no fear of the crisis we are dealing with now. Like many of you joining us today, I am sick and tired of our voices not being heard. I was told to come to college to gain a higher education, but what's the point if no one will believe us? I have taken countless biology and environmental classes that science uses to support the claims of climate change, and yet minimal action has been taken by the leaders of this planet. College students are asked on a regular basis to think about their future, but we need the older generation to think about it as well, so we have the opportunity to follow our dreams like you were able to. We need everyone's help to evoke change on how our society views our planet. This is our home, and we need to treat it as such. We have to continue to have the conversation about climate change, organize events like this to educate our neighbors, and hold ourselves responsible as well. Independently, we can all do our part in a multitude of ways. Reduce our plastic intake, recycle, carpool with your family and coworkers, try a plant-based diet, only buy from environmentally conscious businesses. These are simple actions that we can all adopt into our daily lives that will help reduce our carbon footprint overall. I thank you all for allowing me the time to speak today and for joining us on our fight against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Students for Sustainable Earth. I think they have a table here someplace too. Way to go, WMU students. It's right back there. Megan is directing me. Thank you. So a group that, again, didn't even exist until a year ago, focused on nonviolent direct action. Here to speak on behalf of Extinction Rebellion, Chris Carr.
Hi, everybody. It feels like the rebellion maybe started a little bit earlier today on the march, so that was great. What I want to talk about today is disruption, and there's two kinds of disruption I want to talk about. The first is that caused by the collapse of our ecosystem, and the second is that caused by us trying to stop that collapse. It's a beautiful day out here today. It's sunny. It's hotter than you would think it should be. The park is full of beautiful and bright people, and yet this is perhaps humanity's darkest hour. We're witnessing abrupt climate breakdown, a mass extinction bigger and faster than that wiped out the dinosaurs. The science is clear. Biodiversity is collapsing, our oceans and lakes are poisoned, the air is polluted, glaciers are melting, floods, droughts, catastrophic storms are all increasing. It's all happening way faster than predicted. The UN climate report says we have 11 years to dramatically change the way we treat the earth and all the creatures that call it home. Dramatic change is the same as disruption, and we need disruption. We need to change. But that climate report is based on middle-of-the-road scenarios, based on moderate and predictable climate change. What we're living through are the worst-case scenarios. Environmental collapse is happening years, decades faster than predicted. We simply don't have 11 years anymore. If we continue to ignore the climate crisis, we'll experience an unprecedented level of disruption, all within our lifetimes, not our children's, not our grandchildren's, the people that are here today. If we think we can slowly phase out fossil fuels, we're going to experience this dramatic and unprecedented disruption. If we continue to rely solely on voting and lobbying and petitioning, education, compromise, recycling, telling people it's all going to be okay, it's going to be easy, we're all going to get great jobs, and nobody's going to have to pay for this except a few rich people. We're lying if that's what we're telling ourselves. We're going to experience this disruption if that's what we do. And this disruption is going to be disease, starvation, mass migration, war, death, and possibly extinction. This is what ecological disruption will entail. It's not a pretty picture. Extinction Rebellion is not running a campaign based on hope or feel-good measures. Extinction Rebellion is about telling the truth, facing the facts, and doing what is necessary to confront the climate and ecological emergency. Words and working within the system have failed us. The system itself has failed us. All of our efforts to combat global heating and habitat destruction over the last 30 years have been an abysmal failure. That failure lies firmly at the feet of our government and the corporations and institutions that place profit before all else. We therefore declare ourselves in rebellion against our government, the corrupt, inept institutions that threaten our future. It's not only our right, it's our duty to rebel. Our local chapter, Extinction Rebellion Southwest Michigan, is part of Extinction Rebellion International. It's a nonviolent, direct action movement. There's hundreds of chapters all over the world. October 7th is kicking off a month of worldwide rebellion. We're going to be in Chicago on October 7th to join that rebellion, and I hope some of you will come with us. We have 4 demands. The first is that the government and the media tell the truth about the climate and ecological emergency that we're in. The second is the government must enact legally binding policies to reduce carbon emissions to net zero by 2025, not 2050, and take further action to remove the excess atmospheric greenhouse gases. We must cooperate internationally so that the global economy runs on no more than half the planet's resources. Our third demand, we do not trust our government to make the bold, swift, and long-term changes necessary. We do not intend to hand further power to politicians. Instead, we demand a citizens' assembly to oversee these changes as we rise from the wreckage, creating a democracy fit for purpose. And fourth, and this is important in the United States particularly, we demand a just transition that prioritizes the most vulnerable people and indigenous sovereignty, establishes reparations, remediation led by and for black people, indigenous people, people of color, and poor communities. For years, centuries of environmental injustice, establish legal rights for ecosystems to thrive and regenerate in perpetuity, and repairs the effects of ongoing ecocide to prevent the extinction of humans and all species. So those are our demands. Our aim is to disrupt the functioning of the government and the economy until these demands are met. This calls for strikes like we're having today, all right? But it can't be accomplished with a half-day strike. It has to be sustained, massive disruption. It has to be continually growing and spreading disruption, with one-day strikes becoming week-long strikes. It has to be blockades to disrupt functioning of government and corporate buildings, pipelines, refineries, bridges, roads, airports. This kind of disruption is going to require sacrifice. It will be uncomfortable, and it will piss a lot of people off. But it will be nowhere near as bad as the catastrophic level of disruption we will experience if we fail to act. Our world is on fire. There's no time to be cautious. There's no time to hope that someone else will solve the problem. There's no time to ask politely or ask permission. Now's the time for bold action. Now's the time to take risks. Now's the time to do what is necessary, not what we are told is possible. So in Extinction Rebellion, we call upon every principled and peaceful citizen to rise with us. We refuse to bequeath a dying planet to future generations by failing to act now. We act in peace with ferocious love of these lands in our hearts. We act on behalf of all life, not just human life. There's 2 things that I'm going to ask you to do today. The first, every morning before you've had your coffee, open your bedroom window, stick your head out, and yell, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." The second, and I hope with a bit of luck it'll be more effective, is to join the rebellion today. We're going to start this rebellion at 5 o'clock in just a few minutes to launch the next phase in Southwest Michigan. Go to Extinction Rebellion's table to be briefed and take part on what this peaceful, nonviolent disruption of business as usual in Kalamazoo will entail. And sign up to help build the movement we need to stop the destruction of this planet. This is the last chance we have. The Extinction Rebellion Southwest Michigan, we need and welcome everyone. Students, working people, retirees, people that can do everything that they can and anything that they can, doing what they're best at and learning to do more. We need students, youth, tradespeople, artists, lawyers, professors. We need the unemployed, the homeless. We need everyone to join this rebellion and this movement. There are buttons, flyers, T-shirts. We even have cookies over on our table. So come over and get a cookie, sign up, talk to the people at the table, and find out what you can do. Follow us on Facebook. We still have time to build a better world to get out of this mess we're in. Thank you.
So I know we've had a little bit of a changeover in our audience here, so if you're just showing up, welcome. We are the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. We are representing over 30 different groups in our community: youth, faith, religious, educational. I'm going to miss some. Everybody is working together this year because, as I was just told by one of our lead organizers, Kalamazoo shows up. And here you are. We're so thankful that you're here with us today. Please stay with us. Here to talk about community impacts and the level of things that are happening right here in Kalamazoo, Eddie DeGraw.
Hey everyone. It is really hot out. Show of hands, who is like exceptionally hot right now? I am so hot. It is 87 degrees and it is September 20th. Let's keep that in mind. So I was tasked with finding a citizen that was affected by climate change. And I had a couple in mind. I wanted to try to track them down because it's kind of hard to find them. I'll go back to their story. For now, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that I've noticed, at least this year. How many people, by a show of hands, again, have tried to go to Lake Michigan this year? If you went, you might notice there was a big lack of beachfront. The water has risen quite a bit. It's historic highs, and it's continued. That was one situation where I took my daughter to the lake, and we thought we could hang out at the beach. So yeah, maybe a disruption to our normal beach trip to the lake. We also noticed some blue-green algae in the lake. How many people have heard of the warnings in our lakes? So I thought, see, I'm not from Michigan. I thought, I'm going to move up to Michigan. It's been projected as a really good place to go when climate change happens because of how much fresh water we have. I didn't think about E. coli or bacteria that are going to break out, that have been breaking out this year. Even our local lake had an E. coli breakout several times. So for those that don't have air conditioning, a lot of people go to the lake that's close to us in Comstock, but they're not allowed to go now, occasionally due to E. coli outbreaks, to cool down. So I've chatted up quite a few friends to see what I could bring to this presentation today. Some of my farmer friends have said this has been a really rough year for them. I have some friends that are part of the small farm community in Kalamazoo. Okay, another show of hands. I'm trying to get more engagement. I don't have a written speech here. How many people did a garden this year? It was a very weedy year. It was a very moldy year. It was a really hard year for gardening. So as far as climate projections go, food security is going to be very challenging. And the farmer that I spoke to said that it was very challenging for her. She also had a bit of a crisis in kind of her identity as a successful farmer. I think we need to start thinking about how that's immediately affecting Kalamazoo and the residents in the area. So the story I wanted to bring in the most, the flood that happened in February of 2018 was pretty epic. How many people remember that? There were ski-doos down Riverview. That was the MLive highlight that they took away. However, there was a lot of people that were displaced by that flood. The one couple that I met were put up in a hotel after their rental house was flooded out. And when they got back from staying in the hotel, their landlord had jacked up their rent and evicted them. So I met these people at the Bronson Park Freedom Encampment. Let's give a shout out to the Bronson Park Freedom Encampment. When we think about our most vulnerable population, we really need to give attention to the people that are affected the most. They were part of the Bronson Park Freedom Encampment. We had an opportunity to get to know them. However, I don't have a way to contact them. I wanted them to come up and speak about their situation. So if you remember, the Bronson Park Freedom Encampment was during the summer. It was violently evicted. And then skip to a few months down the road, the polar vortex. A lot of the activists that are here today came together to create an emergency shelter for those who are most vulnerable to deal with polar vortex. Now, Trump made the argument that the polar vortex was not caused by climate change. What do you say to that? Boo! Yeah, there you go. A little louder in the back. So yeah, my 8-year-old can even understand the science for that. Essentially, what I'm trying to highlight are some of the situations and people that I've met this year and the last year alone that I've had to deal with the consequences of climate change in Kalamazoo. During the polar vortex, community organizers got together, had meetings with the city to create an emergency shelter. They didn't have enough places for people to go. Projections for climate futures show more severe storms. With increased heat, there's increased evaporation, which creates increased precipitation. So when Donald Trump again says, "But it's snowing outside," are you ready to boo again? Right. So I just wanted to highlight those stories that I did transportation during the polar vortex, trying to give people rides to wherever they needed to go, the houseless population that needed just a place to stay warm. And the most heartbreaking thing that happened was dropping people off at the end of trailheads that were 2 feet of snow, and watching them walk back to their tents that had collapsed under the snow because the city had declared it safe enough for them to return and to shut down the emergency shelters because they weren't frigid enough. Sorry, it gets me a little angry. They weren't frigid enough temperatures to declare a climate emergency. So hopefully those are just some stories of some things that have happened recently in the last few years that are really eye-opening. I think every one of us here can maybe share similar stories. I just regret not being able to find that couple, find the people who are a part of that situation that were evicted due to the flooding. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you for working with our Kalamazoo population. Again, the impacts of climate change are happening right now, and they're happening right here. And Eddie is the person who works on the front lines trying to help our most vulnerable communities, right? This is also about a just transition. And speaking of that, our next speaker, his book is coming out in February. Maybe we'll convince the library to consider it next year. Carbon Criminals, Climate Crimes, Ron Kramer.
Let's hear it for our fabulous MC, the amazing Denise Keel. About 10 years ago, I decided that I needed to really immerse myself in the climate change literature. And so I did that. I read a ton of materials about climate change. really tried to get an understanding of what was going on. And one of the things that jumped out at me as I was reading that literature is how often the people who are writing about climate change use the language of crime and criminality. Now, these are not people that are criminologists. They don't engage in the systematic or scientific study of crime, and yet they felt compelled to find a term that would best express their outrage, right? They wanted some kind of a symbolic device or some kind of more precise term to express their outrage at what was happening with fossil fuel companies and governments that weren't doing their job. And so I started to think a little bit that, well, you know, I am a criminologist and I do study corporate crime and government crime, so maybe I ought to take a sort of a systematic look at this issue from the perspective of a criminologist. So I did that, and the result is the book that Denise just mentioned, Carbon Criminals, Climate Crimes. In the book, I identify 4 specific morally blameworthy harms that I regard as climate crimes. One of them has to do with the continued extraction and marketing of fossil fuels by energy companies. One has to do with what I call the crime of political omission, which we're talking about a lot today, the failure of governments to do what they should be doing. I also look at the socially organized denial counter movement, which has been so effective in helping to block political action from taking place. And finally, I look at something that I call crimes of empire, which looks at wars for oil and Pentagon emissions and the militarized way we're adapting to climate migrants. Now, I don't have time to go through all those forms of crime today. I just want to make 2 major points. One is that in the book, I go into great detail about how the Trump administration has engaged in all 4 forms of climate crimes. All 4 forms. Tom Engelhardt, who's the editor of the indispensable website, TomDispatch.com. If you're not familiar with TomDispatch.com, you should check it out. But Tom Engelhardt, writing last year, said, you know, if there are any historians left in the future and they look back, they are going to judge that the officials of the Trump administration were the greatest criminals of all time for what they've done or not done with regard to the climate issue. The other point I want to make about climate crimes is that climate change is an intergenerational crime. We have a lot of young people here today. You are going to be the victims of climate disruption, of the climate emergency. My grandsons are going to be the victims of the climate emergency. And of course, future generations are going to be the victim. So this is an intergenerational crime, and it's so great to see so many young people out here active and working on this issue. And of course, we all need to do that, not just the young people. Us oldsters need to get out there too. And we need to do a lot. We need to become climate voters in 2020, right? Identify those politicians who are going to support efforts to deal with the climate crisis. We also need to join in different groups that are working on this important issue. All these tables around the site here. If you're not already a member of one of those groups, please sign up and start to work with one of those groups. They're doing fantastic work. But we need to create a larger political movement, don't we? This is what Naomi Klein has said, a larger worldwide political movement that's going to force governments, the United States government, the international political community to do what they should have done long ago. So we need to do that. We need to stop the extraction of fossil fuels. We've got to keep it in the ground, right? We've got to make sure that we are adapting to climate change in just ways, just and progressive ways. We've got to ensure that climate justice takes place. So we have a lot of work to do. And in building that mass movement, we need all kinds of activities, from disruption to political electoral activity. So we've got a lot of work to do. For me, I'm not up here just today as a criminologist. I'm also up here as a grandfather. I have 3 grandsons, Truman, Malcolm, and Calvin. And I love those little boys dearly. And I'm in this fight for them. We've got to stop this intergenerational crime. Please work with us. Thank you.
As Ron mentioned, we need everybody thinking about how to solve the climate crisis. We are very proud to have Southwest Michigan Sustainable Business Forum as a partner in our Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. And with that, I'm going to let Lucas Mansberger come take the stage and talk about the business perspective on why we should deal with climate change. Thank you, Lucas.
I didn't put on this costume for the event. It's what I actually have to wear to work every day. Again, my name is Lucas Mansberger, and I've spent my entire 15-year professional career assisting institutions and individuals with their investing as an investment consultant and investment analyst and investment strategist. During the past several years, really beginning about 7 years ago when Bill McKibben helped ignite the debate, I've worked with many clients concerned about climate change to help them understand the debate around and impact of fossil fuel stock exposure in their portfolios. It's been my professional role to take a neutral, unbiased, and evidence-based approach to the dialogue with clients. And to that end, I thought it'd be interesting to look back at the evidence, take a look back at the arguments being had in the earlier days of the Divest Invest movement, and attempt to assess how those arguments have fared in the subsequent 7 years. So, of course, there's the general argument from the Divest Invest movement made in 2012, 2013, that the climate is changing due to human activities, that governments worldwide would soon coordinate to address emissions, and when that happened, investors would realize that fossil fuel-based companies and their large stores of coal and oil were effectively worthless. What would many skeptical investors back then say in response? They would say, and I'm not demonizing them, by the way, they would say that that future may be true, but it's very hard to predict the future. We generally don't try to make macroeconomic calls in our big portfolios, so instead we'll focus on what we know, and what we think we know is that your return, if you divest from fossil fuel stocks, you're going to hurt the return of your portfolios. Risk and diversification. You need to invest in energy. It's a big part of the stock market, and anytime you reduce the number of holdings in your portfolio, you lose diversification, the risk of your portfolio will go up. And then they would say, and you know what, anyway, think about the real world impact. Divesting from fossil fuel companies doesn't really affect the fossil fuel stocks in any way, does it? So why do it? So let's review these arguments here. First, the activists' general prediction for the future. Did it come true? In 2015, there was the Paris Agreement, where 195 countries from around the world agreed to individually determine their contributions towards efforts to limit the effects of greenhouse gas emissions on the climate. So, growing consensus. Just yesterday, a global coalition of 515 investors from around the world, representing 35 trillion in assets, and many of the world's largest asset managers, has called on governments to accelerate their movement toward a low-carbon future, with actions including a price on carbon emissions and a phasing out of fossil fuel subsidies. So the last part of that argument, what about the fossil fuel companies? Has the market begun to reflect these changes in policy and changes in investor attitudes? Well, let's look at some of these arguments from the skeptics here. So that return argument, would it have hurt you to divest from fossil fuels back then in 2013? We measured this here, and if you look at the return of the S&P 500 minus the energy companies, so if you were to have divested back at the beginning of 2013, your portfolio would have been up 144%. So that means $100 invested, you would have had $244, pretty nice. The energy companies in the index since 2013 have returned 3%. 3%. So you would have had $140 less investing in energy companies. So it hurts your portfolio to be invested in energy companies. What about risk? The energy sector has been far more volatile than the broad index. And actually, those who have taken fossil fuel stocks out of their portfolios are less risky now over the last 7 years. And then how about that argument about the real world impact? Divesting's not going to hurt anybody, any of these companies. Why would you even bother to do that? Well, just a couple days ago, Peabody Energy, the huge coal company, came to market and tried to borrow $900 million to help them basically merge with another coal company and continue in a stronger position. Well, the market said to them, we're going to charge you 8% for that. Normally, a company of their type would be charged 4%. And you know what that means? $40 million extra a year that Peabody has to pay because people are afraid that no one wants to hold coal companies anymore, because nobody wants to hold coal companies anymore. So that goes to show you, they actually had to scuttle the whole deal. They wouldn't borrow like that, so they were not able to raise the money. So divestiture, in that case, did affect that company. So over the past 7 years, the state of the world that climate activists predicted would come to be has come to be. And in this state of the world, the major arguments against divestiture have proven faulty. So where are we now? There's a lot of strong momentum in the market in favor of transitioning to a low-carbon future. However, it's obvious we are still in a dire situation. Estimates for the amount of additional investment needed to transition are on the order of $500 billion a year in order to limit the worst effects of climate change. So in this debate and in this movement, what's the best thing you can do when it comes to your money and the money of the institutions that you are a part of? Continue to push your school, your governments, your companies, your nonprofits. Ask them how they address climate risk in their investment portfolios. And this is not hypothetical. I really do mean to go do this. Ask the people you know here and ask them how they address climate risk in their investment portfolios. Ask them to make public the rationale for remaining invested in fossil fuel stocks. Educate them. If you know better, educate them on new investment opportunities in green and clean tech solutions. Make them commit to taking steps to investing in solutions for a low-carbon future, and promise your support and your donations for when they do take those steps. And if you are feeling discouraged, remind yourself that so much has changed in the past 7 years in ways that didn't seem possible at the beginning. So what might you be able to accomplish in the next 7 years? Thank you.
It's such an honor to be here today. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by all of you, knowing that millions of people are striking with us right now in 132 countries in the single biggest day of climate action ever. Yes! We are a force united, making history by standing up for a livable future. Take a moment to look around you. We're parents, grandparents, children, teenagers, university students, teachers, professors, working and retired from all walks of life. And there's one thing we have in common. We recognize the severity of the existential threat of climate change, the climate crisis, and we are ready to take serious action. There's no other place I'd want to be, nothing more meaningful we could be doing. My 7-year-old daughter, Grace, is missing a day of second grade for this, and I couldn't be more proud. It's our children's very future at stake. Everything and everyone we love is at stake. Together, we will no longer be powerless in the face of the destruction of our planet and injustice suffered by those least responsible. You are all part of this movement to change the path humanity is on. Our house is on fire. We refuse to let our children's future burn. We won't accept business as usual. We cannot go about our lives as normal, pretending it's okay. Climate consequences are upon us. As one of my favorite climate scientists, Paul Beckwith, says, 2030 is the new 2070. Some headlines just this week. 2019 was Northern Hemisphere's hottest summer on record. 2.2 million Somalis at risk of starvation amid massive drought. South Dakota farmers reeling from year's second record-breaking flood. Earth to warm more quickly, models show. UN Human Rights Chief declares climate change the greatest threat to human rights. 7 million people displaced by extreme weather in the first half of 2019. Fueled by climate change, Hurricane Dorian devastates the Bahamas. Amazon fires, a true apocalypse. Our house is on fire, and we're going to act. My name is Dana Maines. I'm representing Citizens Climate Lobby. CCL is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots advocacy group formed 12 years ago, now with 553 active chapters all over the world and covering 90% of U.S. congressional districts. CCL empowers everyday people like you and me to work together to build support in Congress for climate legislation. We learn to be effective with our government to reclaim our democracy, and we work directly with our members of Congress. That means that citizen volunteers lead meetings with our elected officials regularly. In fact, this year so far, we've held over 264 face-to-face meetings with representatives and senators, because ultimately, those are the people that are going to write and pass national climate policy. We make constituent voices heard in Congress, and we are climate voters. We've heard that today many times. It is so important. We have to vote in members of Congress that are ready to take action. We're relationship driven. We believe that relationships based on mutual respect and understanding are what will bring lasting change. We are making climate change a bridge issue, not a wall. As Greta says, we're all in this boat together. CCL knows climate change is a big problem that needs a big solution. That's why I joined 8 years ago. I knew individual actions are great, but alone will not be enough. We need a solution that matches the scale of the problem that will reduce America's emissions fast. I'm excited to share with you that our carbon fee and dividend bill is here. It's been introduced in the House, H.R. 763, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act of 2019, with 62 co-sponsors, including Michigan Reps Dan Kildee and Brenda Lawrence, and the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. It puts steadily rising fee on carbon emissions at the source and returns 100% of the revenue back to households in a monthly dividend. The dividend puts money back into people's pocket to spend as they see fit, helping low and middle income Americans. It reduces U.S. emissions by at least 40% in the first 12 years. Immediate health benefits save hundreds of thousands of lives. We create 2.2 million jobs, and it boosts local economies. It's the policy that climate scientists and economists alike say is the best first step to reduce catastrophic climate change. Is it the only step? No. But it is the best single policy measure to jumpstart our leap away from the suicidal business as usual track that we are headed down. And it's on the table right now in Congress, ready to go. Our House is on fire. We need all of you to please lend your support. Find out how by visiting our table. We're collecting letters today that we'll hand deliver to Congress in November. An honest price on carbon is foundational to the global shift away from fossil fuels to the just, healthy, equitable world we all want. Citizens that organize and are empowered to be effective with their government can make an impact on the world's biggest problems. I've seen it. We can make an impact. I'll finish with a quote from Alex Steffen, often used by Sam Daly Harris. Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy for a large population of people to think that nothing is going to get better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problem we face and still insist that we solve those problems. We can freely acknowledge the tremendous struggle ahead of us and yet choose to remain decidedly optimistic and to work from a fundamental belief in the possibilities of the future. When we do that, we liberate ourselves from some of the burden of despair and powerlessness saddled on us by systems of patriarchy and colonization. Power to the people. Thank you. And let's take care of each other as we press forward in this most important fight of and for our lives. Mitakuye Oyasin. We are all connected.
Woo! Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Citizens Climate Lobby. Thank you, Public Safety. If you haven't noticed, there's some other things going on right now. Thank you, Public Safety, for being here with us today. I want to make sure you hear from more of our Kalamazoo Central students. We have a great lineup for you. I'm going to try to get your names all right. Come on up here. Marcus Beeman, Owen Hoover, Margaret Lacan, Kevin Weisel, Kearney Miller. I tried.
Hi, I'm Kevin. Sorry to blow your eardrums out. Not really sorry, though, because guess what? Our world is dying, so that's also something to keep in mind. I have had the privilege to grow up with a mom who teaches world ecological problems at Western Michigan University, and trust me, it's hard to cope with when you're a child, but I'm so thankful that she was there to teach me about this. And you know what really stayed with me the most? The food. The food did. You know, why would I want to care about what's going into my body? And why wouldn't I want to care that countless cattle are packed into these small areas, producing so much carbon emissions that are destroying our world? And those cows are what's the biggest, one of the biggest producers of carbon. And not only is that really scary, but they're also very delicious. So now we have to make the decision of whether to have our stomachs full or whether to have a healthy world. And trust me, it is a hard decision, but when you think about it, it's really not. The world is more important. I'm not saying that we should get rid of all meat and all forms of carbon emission, because let's face it, it's necessary. Meat's delicious, burgers are delicious, and we all know this. And never once I saw these countless cows packed into these small areas that have said, holy cow, and meant it to that caliber, I wholeheartedly agree that this world is what's keeping us alive. You know, that's not a debatable fact, but people tried to debate it anyway. So figure that one out for me, because I can't. I haven't been able to really put it into perspective until our fantastic physics teacher, Joshua Gottlieb, has grouped us together, found the people who care, found the people who are ready to take initiative and help us take that first step. I'm Kevin Wessel. I'm here to help us live our fullest life. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Owen Hoover. Radical reform, that is what we need. All throughout history, huge changes did not happen without a huge majority of the people behind it. Take the independence of our own country, for example. The people who created the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, they needed everyone behind them, everyone supporting them, doing what they thought was just and right. And they were successful because they had people behind them supporting them. They even went door to door doing everything that they can to rally people behind them. That's what we need. The passion, the mentality to know that what you are doing will be beneficial for millions back then and billions today. That what we can accomplish will be a stepping stone into a new future, one where we can focus on improving life, not trying to save it. Unwillingness, the fact that most people know of climate change and believe in it, but yet are still choosing to do nothing. The thinking that, that's the scientist's job. I mean, it's what they're getting paid for, right? For them to save the world, not us. But that's not true. Scientists can only prove it. They can help enact change when the next level is the government. And as we can see, the government will do anything before they get to that point, before they get to the point where they have to do something about it, because of where they get their money. They get their money from corporations and businesses. And it's been made clear that it's easier and more fiscally rewardable to pollute instead to actually care about the environment. And that right there, that's just ignorance. Ignorance, plain and simple. Knowing that the costs and what you have to do now to mitigate the effects of climate change are minimalistic compared to what you're going to have to do and what you're going to have to pay in the future. There isn't even a debate. They know that it's going to be worse for them in the long run, but they're still set on the here and the now. The self-interests, the here and the now, the instant gratification, even though that math and science proves differently. Thank you. I'm Owen Hoover.
Hi, I'm Maggie Lecken, and I'm a junior. So today, you've heard a lot of facts from different speakers, so I'm going to speak from the heart instead. So originally, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to say up here, the plan was to maybe just stand up here and scream for a couple seconds, because as my friends can testify, I do that when I get stressed out, when something's overwhelming, and climate change is one of those things. So, in the future, I would like to have or adopt kids at some point. And I would like for them to have an opportunity for a future. We always talk about how the millennials have suffering adulthoods due to the actions of older generations, But if we continue these trends that are causing climate change, my children or my grandchildren may not have the opportunity for a bright future. I do not think that's an option we should have the right to take away. We live in Kalamazoo, where we have something called the Promise, which can pay for some or all of your college tuition. We are always told how this provides more people with opportunities for their future. But in the future, people may not be able to benefit from any programs like this. As a town that talks about the future so often, we should really do all we can to protect it. Thank you.
I'm Kearney Miller. I'm a junior at Kalamazoo Central, and I know what it's like to feel hopeless. Our first home football game, I stayed well after the final buzzer declared us the victor to pick up the plastic waste in our home stands. I was half an hour past the last buzzer when my box was full of plastic waste. I scanned around our home stands and saw I only made it halfway through. I walked back to my car, suddenly feeling we were not all declared victors. I wept my entire way home. I know how it feels to be hopeless. I was just one person. Nothing I could say would matter. I was just one person. Nothing I could do would matter. I was just one person, and the way I voted would not matter. I was insignificant. I was just one person. Until I got to my school and I found other like-minded people. And now we're all here with all of you, other like-minded people. I knew what feeling powerless was like until I got here and I saw all of you, a group that can and will make change. I don't look around and see individuals anymore. I look around at all of us here for a cause greater than any one of us. I see and feel a powerful force to be reckoned with that will make them hear us. They love to ask us our plans for the future, where we want to go to college, what we want to major in. Maybe it's time we start telling them what we're doing now to make sure we have a future. Thank you.
All right, folks, hang with me. Few more speakers. I got a reverend, I got a business owner, I got Pat Lynn, and I got Mark Miller, community activist, right? And then we're going to wrap it up with some more music and close this guy out. So hang with me just a little bit longer. Representing Hope for Creation, Reverend Ruth Mordyke.
Hello all, I'm Ruth Mordyke. I'm pastor of Skyridge Church, and I am representing Hope for Creation, which is an interfaith group in town seeking to address climate and environmental issues. And I'm going to make a bold assumption that we're all here today because of something or somebody that we love. We possess a deep love for this planet, for its waters and its landscapes and its creatures, and its beauty and its drama and its joyousness. And we love our children and our grandchildren and friends and neighbors and other family, and we yearn for them to have full and thriving lives. And we know that all great spiritual traditions remind us to love and care for others. And in this world, in this time, to love and care for others, to love and care for all people, to love and care for all our kindred in creation, demands that we take action to care for the earth. And when we love people, we know that we must change and make sacrifices. We can learn to walk or to take public transit instead of driving. We can learn to buy locally. We can move toward plant-based diets. We can learn to carry our own bags to the grocery store. We can drive smaller cars and hybrids and electric vehicles. And if we're really committed and we happen to be property owners or people with a little bit of money, we might convert our lawn to native plants. We might give up some flying. We might even give up taking a trip on a cruise ship and make sure other people know why we're not doing that. But none of this begins to be enough. None of it begins to be enough. When we love people, when we love this planet, we change. But I also bring to you today the words of Cornel West, who is a theologian and activist. And Cornel West reminds us that justice is what love looks like in public. What we do personally, what we do incrementally matters, but it also must lead to addressing systemic issues and systemic evils now. So if you love this world, work for justice. Oppose new oil infrastructure. Agitate against wars for oil, one of which is starting as we stand here. We have saber rattling for more oil as we stand here today. Work for justice. Stand in solidarity with poor and minority communities systematically poisoned with the toxins of this capitalist economy. Work for justice and advocate for a carbon tax. Work for justice and grow alternatives to capitalism's horrors. Work for justice and apply pressure for the development of regenerative agriculture. Work for justice. Support the rights of nature. Remind others that the planet and its creatures have lives that must be honored and defended. Go ahead, of course, and do whatever it is you're doing in your personal sphere to preserve the life of the planet that you love. Do more of it, but never, ever pretend that it's enough, because it's not. We must oppose a system based on greed, exploitation, hate, and violence. We must challenge the powers that run this culture now and that have run it for much too long. We must grow strong backbones and brave hearts and defy the evils in the status quo. We do this because we love, and as Cornel West said, justice is what love looks like in public.
So next up, again representing the business community, we need everybody in this fight for the climate crisis and climate justice. Representing Southwest Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, a man who shares a similar dream as I do, I think. And we've often talked about this, that Kalamazoo could be the most sustainable city, not in the state, not even in the country, but the Kalamazoo could be the most sustainable city in the world. Mark Lee.
Thank you. You know, I want to echo one thing that Reverend Ruth was saying about love. We have such, just looking around today, there's been love filled in this park. It's a love for each other. It's a love for the next generation. This is my daughter, Naomi. I'm wearing her little ear things. I'm motivated a lot by the love that I've created with my wife and my family, and the love that I have for my neighbors and this community. And I do sincerely believe we can change this world. We can change it to the positive. We could switch things around. You know, who here would like to see Kalamazoo as the most sustainable city in the state of Michigan? All right. Yes, 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 we can do it. There is strength here. There's strength in our numbers. There's abilities and things that we could do every day. The one thing that's going to help us do it is just acting with pure love. So I love where I live. I love Kalamazoo. I have a house that I love and I enjoy it, and that's part of what I'm going to talk about is the living, where we all live in our homes, whether it be apartments or an individual standalone house. Those 30% of the energy, the fossil fuel energy that we burn is used and consumed in the houses and the places where we live. So of that 30%, another 30% of those houses, of the 30% of the energy that we use in our houses, about 30% of it is simply wasted flies out the window, flies out the attic, goes out drafty windows. We lose it through our foundation. And there's an opportunity for us to take control of our energy future just by acting with love for the place that we live and the ability to make that happen and make good choices along that line. So the majority of our houses were built before 1990, probably in Kalamazoo, the city of Kalamazoo. There's maybe about 5% houses that have been built after 1990. Most of them are older houses that have an opportunity to be turned into an energy efficient, enjoyable, healthy house. And we just need to take action. And taking that action, whether you own or rent, if you rent, this is something that you can talk to your landlord about and say, hey, I'm tired of paying, I'm tired of being in a very uncomfortable room, or I hear a lot of people complain about it and they think they're powerless in it. But there's a lot of renters, there's a lot of landlords who are actually taking positive steps toward making their rental houses energy efficient and comfortable and healthy. And those are the landlords you should be seeking out, because those are ones you can have a much healthier house. And regular homeowners, you have the same opportunity to do that. Acting with love is one of the only ways that we could save our planet. It helps give us a guiding light. When you see scraps, as like the high school students were talking about after cleaning up after a game, they were acting in love of picking up the garbage and the debris that was left there, because they have a love for their planet. They have a love for where they live, and I honor that so much. I'm going to wrap up with a quote from Margaret Mead that maybe you all are familiar with. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world, Kalamazoo. Indeed, this is the only thing that ever has. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark and Naomi. I did put my money where my mouth was and put a bunch of insulation in my own house this year, so that was pretty awesome. The next speaker I'm going to let introduce herself, Pat Lynn.
Thank you. As is our way, I will introduce myself in the language. Ani, bimadazazed, Mishkwa Benisikwe in Indigenous, Nemki Dodam, Mixed Blood Cherokee in English, Anishinaabekwe Odawa, New Hampshire, Donjiba. Indigenous people are taught that we need to start every day with our hearts filled with gratitude. We're all born with an obligation to take care of the planet and with an obligation to serve future generations. The earth was not given to us by our parents. It was loaned to us by our children. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. The fact that the Indigenous community is represented last today leads me to a prophecy which predicts today's environmental crisis. It is a warning and at the same time a promise of better things to come if all of us living on Turtle Island can learn to put aside our egos, our cultural and racial bias, and come together as one people for our collective healing and the healing of Mother Earth. About 1,400 years ago, 7 prophets came among the Anishinaabe people who were living in peace and harmony along the eastern shores of North America. These prophets left the people with 7 different predictions for what the future would hold. Each of these predictions was called a fire, and each fire referred to a particular era of time that would come in the future. These ancient teachings were called the 7 Fires Prophecy, but their message is relevant for today's world. It offers us great insight into both the wisdom of the Anishinaabe people and offers a solution to our current environmental, social, and spiritual crisis. The first 3 prophets warned that a race of people referred to as the light-skinned race would be coming to their lands. The Anishinaabe people were advised to leave their home and go deep into the interior of the continent. The prophets knew that the people would not be safe unless their wisdom was protected and their very lives were protected by moving. The third prophet told the people to continue west until they found water where food was growing, and that was in the Great Lakes, and it was wild rice that they found. The fourth, fifth, and sixth prophecies describe what we know as the 500-year history of Native people following the arrival of the Europeans. The 7th prophet said there would come a time when the waters had been so poisoned that the fish would die. Animals and plants would fall sick and begin to die. Much of the forests and prairies would be gone, so the air would begin to lose the power of life. Some people say we lost our spiritual connection with Mother Earth when our religious expression changed from participation in the sounds, the colors, and rhythms of nature. The future of humankind lies waiting for those who will come to understand that their lives and take up their responsibility to all of living things. Who will listen to the trees, the animals, the birds, the voices of the places of this land? We are now living in the time of the seventh fire. We are told that a new people will arise. The new generation must be fearless in their quest as they try to find those traditional ways that were lost along the way. Winona LaDuke says, in this day and age, you have to defend what is of value to you. You cannot sit passively on the side and hope someone else is going to take care of it for you, because that is not going to happen. In our teachings, we have a prophecy called the time of the seventh fire. It says we will have a choice between two paths. One is well-worn, but it is scorched. The other path is not well-worn, but it is green. The time to choose our path is now. It is a choice between life and death, a choice between oil and water, a choice for our food and our future. Water is life, and without clean water, life is not sustainable. Native people are taught that all life forms have a spirit which must be honored in our daily lives. We must reclaim our original instructions to live in humility and with respect for all of creation on Mother Earth. The choice is between a life of materialism or one lived in a spiritual relationship with creation. If we choose the spiritual path, the prophecy is that all races will join together to light the eighth and final fire, an eternal fire of peace and harmony. When I introduced myself, I first said, Ani Bimadazed, which means hello, all of the living. Look around you every day. Greet and give thanks for all of the living. Trees live in communities and are in communication. They plan and react together. It's the same conversation we're having about whether we're going to solve the climate change crisis as individuals or whether we're going to save the collective organism. Our atmosphere, our waters, and our lands are reacting from the trauma that we have been putting onto our planet. We must fall back in love with nature and respect the air, the water, the earth, and fire. This we know. The earth does not belong to humans. Humans belong to the earth. All things are connected and unite us all. Mankind did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. Miigwech. Thank you.
Advisor extraordinaire. He's actually written some climate action plans, helped pass some climate emergency declarations. He'll be our last speaker today, so he has the fun of trying to close it out here with me. And then Grayson will play us a couple more tunes. A man that maybe needs no introduction in the township, Mark Miller.
Well, hello, everyone. You know, I go back a ways in this stuff. The first environmental talk I ever gave was in 1975. That was just kind of a little bit after the last ice age was over. And that is a long time ago. I was still an undergraduate. Well, realistically, back then we had just passed the Clean Air Act. We had just passed the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act. And these were not partisan issues back then. Those were signed by a Republican president. I was really full of hope back then that we would go forward and we'd solve all of the environmental problems that we faced. Something changed. Some years later, we began to retreat from the progress that we had made. We have known about climate change specifically since the 1980s. Actually, some people knew about it before then, but the public started to become aware of it then. But we've done, as we've said over and over again here, very little to address it. If I could go back and tell that idealistic young person, myself, that we would have done so little by 2019, I really would not have believed it. But here we are. Since we've faced such dogged resistance to doing anything, we have to make more drastic changes to prevent the worst effects of climate change, and that's why we're calling it the climate crisis. Now, I've made changes in my own life. My wife is sitting right here in the front row. We both drive electric cars. We have had solar panels on our roof for the last 7 years. Shout out to 4 Elements Energy who helped us with that. We super insulated our house. I have not flown since 2007, and that's just a personal choice. Of course, we switched all our light bulbs to LEDs. But what's the result of all those efforts? So our carbon footprint is compared to an average American household of 2 persons, it's about half. So I've calculated this. Our carbon footprint is about 27 tons of carbon dioxide per year. The average is about 47 tons. But to avoid the worst effects of climate change, we need to get down to a net zero carbon economy within something like 20 to 30 years. We should be aiming initially at something like 2 tons per household. And we simply cannot conserve our way down to that level. It won't work. It's extremely difficult, it's practically impossible to live in a society and do something fundamentally different from how that society is set up. So we need to change the source of our energy as well as how much we use. The good news is we've got those sources at hand. Renewables are now about the same price or less than new fossil fuel installations. What's the problem then? A big part of it is we still have entrenched fossil fuel interests that don't want change. And we've heard over and over about that point here. I don't need to hammer that anymore. Change is coming, but it's not fast enough now that we've waited so long to get started. If we had started in 1990, we could have taken our time in this transition. Now we don't have any more time to spare. So we need to put a price on carbon. Dana talked all about, Dana from CCL, talked all about that in the bill that we are supporting. So this means we have to change laws. Changing laws is more important than changing light bulbs. Does this mean we can forget about conserving? Absolutely not. I would not, if I had thought that, I wouldn't have done all those things that I just listed. Every unit of energy that we can avoid using gets us that much closer to 100% renewables, to meeting that goal. In fact, I challenge everybody sitting out here to compare notes with me. We need to set up a way to do this and kind of have an energy race where the goal is to get to the smallest carbon footprint possible given your own individual circumstances. Everybody wins this race. We all win together if we can do it. And not only as individuals, also as businesses, institutions, and local governments need to act. So I serve as Kalamazoo Township Clerk. The township has adopted a climate emergency declaration. We have committed ourselves to take actions to reduce our footprint, and we're going to consider every action that we take, whether that's buying a new vehicle, or building a new fire station, which is in the long-range plan. We're going to consider all the actions that the township takes from a climate perspective. The city of Kalamazoo has been working on, in different ways, a climate action plan for several years. If you are a city resident, they could stand to hear from you that that's a priority of yours. In all, about 22 states, 550 cities, 900 companies with operations in the U.S. have made climate commitments. At a time when the federal government, as we again have heard here today again and again, has been retreating from its responsibilities. There is no substitute for federal action. The federal government can do things that locals cannot do. And that's a political problem. It requires a political solution. We need to persuade politicians to make climate a top priority. And if we can't, we need to replace them. Citizens Climate Lobby is about that first option, persuasion. And I'm really so happy to be a part of CCL in that they take a relentlessly positive approach toward interacting with even people who might be unlikely allies, but they try very hard to win them over. But we have other groups. We have Climate Reality, Sunrise, the Sierra Club. I haven't heard from the Sierra Club. I'm a member of the Sierra Club, so I'm going to give the shout out for Sierra Club, the world's oldest and largest environmental organization. Each of these groups has their own niche. Each of them has their own part to play in getting us to where we need to be. All of those that I mentioned are represented here today. Pick one or more, join up, follow your bliss and find the one that works the way you want to work. Vice President Al Gore said, "Make no mistake, the next generation will ask us one of two questions. Either they will ask, 'What were you thinking? Why didn't you act?' Or they will ask instead, 'How did you find the moral courage to rise and successfully resolve a crisis that so many said was impossible to solve?'" Our former vice president said that for the first time in 2007. That same question is still before us today.
Wow, and that's why you have Mark Miller close an event for you. I couldn't have said it better myself. All of these groups that are here today, every one of you, I read the whole list earlier, and those of you that have financially supported, the time and the volunteers of every single one of these organizations that made today possible. Together we rise, and we rise as Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition. Please come work with any of us. Thank you. So I just want to also remind you guys that the action doesn't end here today. We've had a lot of students here, a lot of speakers, a lot of energy coming out of today, and there's a few things that we got announced today that you can now be part of. I think most cool that happened today, the Kalamazoo Public Library announced that their common read for the entire year, wow, that was breaking news today, is going to be We Are the Weather, Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast. Stay tuned for that. Those events usually happen in March. That was huge. They chose this event to make that public announcement at. Upcoming next Thursday, as Mark said, the City of Kalamazoo is moving forward on climate action planning, and next Thursday we will host at the Office for Sustainability and then downtown at the Farmers Market the first community meeting on sustainability and climate action planning. Way to go, City of Kalamazoo. Make sure you signed up to get fun emails from me so you can also come down. Hopefully we will be on the agenda very, very soon for our own Kalamazoo City Commission to declare a climate emergency in our own city. Awesome work by lots of people there. Last but not least, our organization is continuing a year-long effort called Fridays for Future. Again, we are here because of Greta. We are here because our planet is on fire and we need to act now. We are taking every Friday from noon to 1 devoted to education, action, and the skills building in our community to continue to combat the climate crisis. Please check us out and follow those events and stay with us. Thank you. Thank you all for coming so much. I'm going to let Grayson Martini-Zeller of Kalamazoo Central High close us out with a couple songs and bid you adieu. Thanks so much.
No. Sorry. Before you do that, Denise needs a round of applause. Come on here. Thank you very much, Denise, for your leadership here. Now you can go ahead, Grayson. Thank you.
Thank you once again to everyone.